All right, hello everyone, and welcome to this Conversations of January. We're very excited to have you all here with us today. Happy New Year. We're very happy to have Alyson Rzeszotarski with us today. She has made a wonderful presentation. She pre-recorded a video of her playing and talking about the percussion section. So we're going to be watching that. As we watch, feel free to put any questions you have in the chat. We'll have about 10 to 15 minutes after the video to ask any questions of Alyson before we end for today. So as always, feel free to use that chat to ask any questions that you may have. I just want to thank our sponsor, Fay Hessen, for making this possible. Thank you for sponsoring all of our conversations. And we look forward to next month, where we're going to talk with Danielle Kuntz. She's going to be talking about Baroque music. She is a scholar at the Bach Library at the Baldwin Wallace Conservatory of Music. So we look forward to that. Alrighty, now I am going to be sharing my screen again to watch this video. If for some reason you're having issues hearing it in the chat, I already tested this with Alyson, so it should be just fine. But if there's any issues, just let me know in the chat. I'll pause it and try it over. And I hope you all enjoy the video.
So I'm pretty excited to share. Hi there, everyone. My name is Alyson Rzeszotarski. I've been a member of the percussion section with the Canton Symphony Orchestra for a handful of years now. But I think this is the first opportunity I've had to actually speak directly to our audience. So I'm pretty excited to share a little bit about myself and my role in the orchestra, and hopefully I'll get to know you all a little better as well. First off, I have to just say thank you for your continued support of the Canton Symphony Orchestra. This has been such a difficult year for all of us, but especially the entertainment industry. Music and all of the arts have really just been devastated by this pandemic. So we truly appreciate you continuing to show your interest and continuing to check out what content we are able to provide for you. And hopefully we'll be back to in-person, live performances as soon as it is safe for all of us to do so. So to start things off, I think some music is in order. I kind of decided to focus on 3 instruments. Originally, I thought this would be a live in-person event, so my plans changed pretty drastically when I realized I had to do this in a video format. And I will apologize off the top. I am not tech savvy. Recording percussion instruments by myself in my house and video editing are not my strong suit. I did the best that I could. So to start things off, I did a little xylophone medley. The xylophone in the orchestra can play a lot of different roles, but as a solo instrument, it's pretty popular in ragtime music. So I've got a George Hamilton Green rag, a piece called Nola, which was originally a piano piece adapted for xylophone, and then a Fritz Kreisler violin piece, again adapted for the xylophone. So I hope you enjoy. Well, I hope you enjoy that xylophone ragtime medley. Next, I figured I'd give you kind of a brief history of my musical journey, how I came to play percussion professionally, and then what it is that I do, what our duties and responsibilities are as percussionists in the orchestra. So I actually started playing piano as a kid. My older sister played, and I thought she was really cool and wanted to do everything that she did. So I played piano for quite a few years. Um, Enjoyed it, was never great at it. When I was about 10, I discovered the drums and thought that that was just the coolest thing. And for whatever reason, my parents agreed to let me play. So I actually started on drum set. Played drum set exclusively kind of until middle school. Joined the middle school band program and did that through high school as well. Discovered all of the other percussion instruments, and it just came naturally to me, and it was something that I really enjoyed. Yeah, practicing sometimes when you're a teenager was a struggle, but for the most part, I wanted to do it and I enjoyed it. So I was fortunate enough, my last 2 years of high school I spent at the Interlochen Arts Academy, um, which was just, it's a magical place. If you have not heard of it, I highly recommend you check it out. And I feel super lucky that I got to study there. From there, I went on to do my undergraduate and my graduate studies at the Manhattan School of Music in New York City. Lived there for 7 years and decided after I finished school that I was kind of just burnt out being in the city, and a lot of my friends were leaving as well, and decided that I just wanted a change of pace. So I moved to Northeast Ohio. I have a lot of extended family in the area. It was kind of equidistant between Chicago and New York, and it's just sort of a fresh start. Not to mention, cost of living is much cheaper than staying in New York City. So a little bit about what we do as percussionists. What is percussion? Basically defined as any instrument that can be struck, be that with a stick or a mallet or a hand. Anything that can be shaken, like a tambourine or a shaker of some sort. And anything that can be scraped, which is typically a cymbal or a gong, tam-tam, some sort of metal surface normally. So as you can see, that's a lot of different instruments, and I think that's a big part of what attracted me to percussion in the first place, and why I still love it as much as I do, is the variety of it. Week to week, I can play multiple different instruments, and I really enjoy the challenge of that and the creativity that comes with that. Percussion is really about making unique sounds in the orchestra, and to me that's really fun, getting to explore different sounds and getting to do something different, even though there are similarities across the instruments. I personally really enjoy the variety of it. So what is a typical work week like for us? First of all, if you're playing principal, you have some extra responsibilities and duties involved. I was acting principal our last full season when our principal took a year's leave of absence. So the main skill with percussion is organization. You have to look at your schedule, know the programming ahead of time, so that you can start planning ahead multiple weeks and if not months to be prepared for what you have to do on the job. The first thing is just getting the music, figuring out an instrument list, and then deciding, what does the orchestra have? Do we need to rent things? What of my own gear am I going to bring and use? And then you have to communicate with the stage crew, because they move a lot of the larger instruments for us, and they need to be in the loop so that things, arrive on stage on the right days for us. And then on top of that, you have to assign the parts. Sometimes it's pretty easy. The composer kind of does it for you. But in a lot of newer music or in a lot of pops type of stuff, you're jumping around quite a bit. And so it can take some planning to figure out who can play what, and to make that all work smoothly. And once you've done that, get parts out to the other members of the section, and then you have to prepare your own parts. A big part of that is listening, so you have to learn the pieces. Percussion, a lot of times we're sitting for a long time and then we stand up and play a note, and that note has to be perfect. You are the only one playing it, and it's a very unique sound. And percussion is a very visual instrument. You know, if I'm sitting on stage and all of a sudden I stand up and grab a triangle and hold it up, or I grab two big discs of metal, like, the audience knows something is coming. So it's a special moment, and you need to treat it as such. And then if you have really difficult passages, obviously you have to practice those and work on those, and then decide, you know, what instruments you want to use. There's a zillion different types of triangles and cymbals and tambourines and sticks and mallets. And you make your decisions before rehearsal, and then you also bring a lot of other gear with you. Sometimes the conductor might have a specific request that's different than what you planned for, and sometimes what you planned for doesn't work in the space. The hall, it might just not sound right, or the way the orchestra sounds on this piece, you might change your mind. So I usually bring quite a few options, and sometimes I stick with my initial gut, and sometimes it ends up being something pretty different. So that's typically the work that goes in before rehearsal. At rehearsal, percussionists are usually one of, if not the first people to show up, just because we have so much gear. Typically you have to set things up, see what kind of space you have on stage. It's rarely enough. We're usually cramped in the back in a little corner. Figuring out a setup. If multiple people need to use the same instrument, it needs to be in a location you can both get to. Making sure that you have ample room for your sticks and mallets or smaller instruments and whatnot. So just making sure all of the logistics are covered before rehearsals even start. And a typical work week for us is 3 to 4 rehearsals and 1, maybe 2 performances. It depends week to week and where you're playing and what the schedule is like. So that's a typical work week for us. The next musical segment I have for you is going to be on the snare drum, which I know is an instrument that typically people might not choose to listen to, or might not have ever listened to as a solo instrument. But it's my personal favorite instrument to play. But I've got 3 different styles for you. First is going to be American rudimental, so it's going to be more open, more sort of accent based. Second is going to be kind of a newer style, pioneered by a guy named Joe Tompkins, which is American French rudimental, which is kind of going to mix the 2 styles together. Really manipulates rhythms in a cool way. And then the third will be a French style, which is a more sort of refined, elegant style of snare drumming. So I hope, even if you don't enjoy it, that you at least learn something new about the snare drum and the possibilities on this. All right, so before our last bit of music, I do feel like I have to address everyone's least favorite topic, the year 2020, and the effect COVID has had on the music industry, and the reason why I am sitting here talking to myself in front of the computer instead of speaking with you all directly, which I would much prefer. Um, 2020 for me started off pretty terrible. I was fortunately in a car accident the end of 2019, had a concussion, and as you can guess, concussions and drums are not a great mix. So January and February were pretty rough, just not feeling so good at all. March rolled around, was feeling a tiny bit better. Was working in Fort Wayne. I think it was the second weekend in March. Was there on Wednesday evening for a rehearsal, had Thursday off, and then was home and was planning to go back on Friday and Saturday for rehearsals and concerts. And Thursday evening got the email that everything was canceled, and by Monday, everything in Ohio was shut down. So I knew right off the bat that everything through March and April was canceled. May and June, they were saying maybe it could happen, but I think I knew everything through the rest of the season would be canceled for us, which was really tough. I had a very full schedule and some opportunities that I was really looking forward to. So it was pretty devastating to find out that, you know, everything was gone for the rest of the season. But fortunately, I was able to be paid for some of it. Certain orchestras, like the Canton Symphony, were able to secure PPP loans and did compensate us for services that we lost, which was at least a bit of a help. And then it turned into the waiting game over the summer to see what was going to happen. I think everyone was hopeful that by September, the start of the season, you know, we could be back to normal or some level of normal. Obviously, that did not happen. If anything, COVID was worse at that point. I was able to go down and play with the Cincinnati Symphony in October. They have a pretty cool setup where they're able to do some video recording and then you know, live stream some concerts for their audience, which was really a breath of fresh air for me and just a small taste of normalcy, at least for a couple days to get back performing again. But now fast forward to January 2021 and we're still in the holding pattern. Everything is shut down for the foreseeable future until it's safe, which won't be until the vaccine is more widely available for us. So my hopes looking forward is, you know, when you lose all of your sort of normal routines, you start to reflect on, well, what was important and what wasn't. For me, I really miss performing. I'm one of the lucky ones that genuinely loves what I do. So I am just itching to get back in the concert hall and playing with my colleagues again. You know, we practice on our own, but it's not the same as performing with the group. So what I'd love to hear from you guys is, you know, what you miss about these live performances. And I think the opportunity we have is to do a hard reset and look at the orchestra as an organization and see what improvements can be made so that when we do come back, we can come back even better and provide an even better concert going experience for all of you, which is really what matters. We're here to serve the audience. So we'd like to do that to the best of our ability. And we hope that when this is over, that you're going to want to come back and see what we can do. So any sort of insight that you have, I know this is sort of selfish research, but we would love to hear from you, you know, what we can do moving forward, because that's all we can do at this point. So to close things out, I have Johann Sebastian Bach, who's one of my favorite composers. I have 4 movements from the E minor Lute Suite performed on the marimba, which, if you're not familiar with the marimba, it's basically like a giant xylophone. And this is one of my favorite pieces to perform on the marimba. So I hope you enjoy. Thank you again for watching, and I'm looking forward to talking with you shortly on the Zoom call. Thank you.
Wonderful. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Alyson. That was, I'd already listened to the video once, but it was so wonderful to hear it again. I do have some questions that were sent to me during the video, so we're going to get into that. But Alyson, thank you. Claps for you. That was wonderful. And especially recording in all the different rooms of your house, finding strategic places for a marimba, which can't be easy to fit in a house.
Yeah, that was.
How'd you get it in there?
It's on wheels, so you can kind of roll it around. It took me a couple rooms to figure out where I was going to put it that looked okay and didn't have things rattling on the walls.
I've had to move the symphony's marimba, and it takes a large doorway to get that thing through it.
Yeah, and you take it apart and put it in pieces, and pretty standard part of our lives.
Yeah, I had to put together a xylophone for the first time in my life, and I looked at it and I was like, I don't doing?
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
crazy. But thank you again so much for doing this and for talking. A couple of questions that people have talked about, asked are, when you're rehearsing, preparing for something, do percussionists rehearse just as a section ever, or is it usually only with the full orchestra?
In an orchestral setting, not very often, just because we don't have time.
Right.
Rarely do we get specific time just for a sectional. Occasionally we will if it's like a percussion feature. Sometimes I've participated like in young people's concerts and things that just have a percussion section, then we will,
Right.
rehearse our section alone.
Right.
And if there's something really difficult, maybe we'll schedule something for ourselves. But typically we don't.
Right. So when one thing, so percussion has always been around. It's the most ancient instrument is probably a drum. I mean, that is, it's been around for a long time, but heavy percussion use in orchestral settings has not been around forever. The timpani maybe being the exception of that has been in the orchestra longer than other types of percussion instruments, but it wasn't really until the Romantic period that we saw heavy use of percussion. So in that sense, I mean, you just played a piece by Bach, which is awesome. I mean, Bach can be played on anything, which is awesome. But what is your favorite orchestral music to play? Is it something that is more modern and heavy use of percussion, or something that is more like a transposition of something that is older?
Definitely the newer stuff I think is the most fun for us, just because there's more of it and it's used kind of in more creative ways. Typically, aside from timpani, the first percussion that was introduced was kind of as like Turkish march music. So bass drum cymbals, maybe a triangle. So you're, basically just playing a march, just notes and laying down the beat, which can be fun in its own way. But Stravinsky, I think, was one of the first composers to really use percussion in a way that has become more common now, and was really creative. I mean, revolutionary at his time, some of the stuff that he did. So that's, Rite of Spring is really fun for percussionists. That's one that always comes up for us. And then nowadays, what composers are doing is really pushing us to the limits, which is fun sometimes. Also, sometimes stuff doesn't work the way they think that it will, and it can be really challenging. But that's cool to like see what we can do. But yeah, asking us to be constantly switching instruments, and you're holding 4 different mallets all the time, and it's more of a logistical challenge than it is. Sometimes the parts themselves are very challenging, but the logistic demands are probably the biggest part of what's coming out now.
Right. It's always, it's interesting. You can tell that there needs to be one more percussionist in the section when you watch the orchestra, and you just suddenly watch someone just run across the back, just like all of a sudden, just dashing to get to something. It is kind of entertaining to watch, but of course not ideal, because I know back there it's so crowded and you've got so much stuff happening.
Yeah, those situations get nerve-wracking for us. I think the Harry Potter concerts, when we do those, are always just huge setups, instruments everywhere, and you're constantly just running around and hoping you don't knock something over.
Yes, you would almost have to memorize a schedule in your brain of like, first I go to this instrument and then you have to have like a path memorized in the back.
Yeah, that's actually a big part of the work that goes in before rehearsals, is like marking your part. And I literally just write an arrow and like write the next instrument that I have to go to, because I won't remember or have time to like visually look and find it.
I deal with percussionists at a very low level with the youth symphony, and trying to help them with that has been a learning curve for me, figuring out how all of it works. So one question I wanted to talk to you about, because and a lot of people have asked, is so the Canton Symphony is a per service organization, which means that many of our musicians also play in a lot of other orchestras and organizations. So some people have been asking, what are all the organizations that you are a part of? What other orchestras or maybe different ensembles?
Yeah, so I play pretty frequently down with the West Virginia Symphony as well. There again, a per service orchestra, but I go down there and play with them. Akron from time to time. I just played with Cincinnati back in the fall, which was pretty cool. And, you know, different things pop up all the time, but Akron and Canton are probably the local ones that
And how does that work? Because I know that, you know, a lot of musicians are on the sub list, meaning if someone needs, one of their contracted musicians isn't available, they'll call someone from the sub list.
Right.
Is that the situation for you a lot of the times?
Yep. I think most orchestras kind of have, if you are on the sub list or you know the principal, and you know you get asked if you show up and you play well and they like you and you're a fun person to have around, you'll get called again.
Yes.
So even though sometimes there aren't actual sub lists, sometimes there are. Sometimes it's just people that you know and you go and you play well, you get asked back again.
Exactly.
So it sometimes it's sort of an unofficial sub list that you know you've played there quite a bit and you just kind of become a regular. And percussion is kind of unique in that we never know how many people we need for each service. It can change. Sometimes you only need one, sometimes you need 5 or 6. So our work as a freelance percussionist can really change. You know, sometimes we're busy all the time. Lots of orchestras are programming big pieces. And sometimes, you know, it's like a Bach or a Baroque festival or a Mozart festival and there's not percussion at all.
So you talked a little bit about, you know, we talked about this a lot at the Symphony of 2020 and now 2021 and how our lives have changed and how orchestra has had to change and shift. And looking into the future, what are you hoping, did you, taking this year into consideration and looking into the future, what would you hope a normal schedule looks like? Is it exactly like what we left it, or do you want to see orchestras trying something new that they weren't doing in the past, that now that this year has happened, you want to see something different?
Yeah, I definitely see, obviously this was horrible and we wish it didn't happen, but it did. So I see it as an opportunity to reset and, you know, really look at what worked and what didn't. And I think orchestras in general have been struggling for years. Like audience numbers have been dwindling. This isn't a new thing. This wasn't something due to COVID. And I think having this kind of complete shutdown is a chance to sort of hit the refresh button and see what else we can do. I don't think it does us any good to come back exactly the way that we were. And what I hope is, you know I've been missing it. I would assume other people are as well. Like everyone wants to get out and do, you know, whatever live event it is that you love to do. I'm assuming all of you watching that it's live music. Otherwise, not sure what brought you here, but hopefully, you know, you're wanting to come back and see some concerts, and hopefully new people, new audience members are going to show up. I'm hoping there's sort of like an influx of everyone just wants to get out and go to these live events. So I think what we need to capitalize on is, okay, we get new audience members in, how do we keep them coming?
For sure.
So I think that, you know, we obviously want to offer the same stuff that people have liked. Like people enjoy coming to the orchestra. We don't want to get rid of that, you know, traditional orchestral programming. But I do think, you know, maybe some smaller chamber stuff would be a good way, or maybe, you know, some smaller chamber stuff before orchestra concerts as a way to kind of interact and learn more about the musicians in the orchestra, I think is kind of a cool opportunity.
Yeah. And I know that's something that we've been talking about constantly here at the Symphony, obviously. And, you know, we have a lot of projects that we've been working on, and the podcast that we just released, and all of these different programs that we are hoping to hear from new people and get well, maybe not new people, but people who aren't often heard from, to get new ideas about how to make the Symphony more accessible to people and more welcoming to people. And I think, especially for a younger generation, having, you know, diverse programming, chamber music stuff, maybe a little bit more modern stuff mixed in with the wonderful classics that we all need. And I think percussion has a really interesting place in that, because percussion is, you know, we're we're in a time where people they like to be entertained and they like the flashiness. And you mentioned this in your video about percussion is visual. People see when the percussionist is about to do something, and watching percussion performances of just percussion groups can be, it's really fun to watch because it's flashy, it's awesome. So I think percussion actually has a really interesting place in this moving forward. So I know we're running a little short on time, so I will ask a couple more questions that got given. Looking at the percussion family, do you have a favorite instrument? I know that's really difficult because percussion is such a huge family of instruments. Is there one that you prefer, though?
I mean, part of it is I do love the variety of it, but to play as a solo instrument, I really love playing snare drum. I find it's really unique, and it's just something I've always connected with. In the orchestra, I love playing cymbals. It's such a bizarre instrument to just pick up these two like giant discs of metal, and it's completely unique to any other percussion instrument. And it's usually like, it's the culmination of a big moment most of the time, not always, but and the sounds you can create on cymbals are just, it's really fun to explore that.
And then one last question is this, this whole year has been a big pause. And, thinking about how percussionists use, so sometimes percussionists, you mentioned this as well, you sit there for a very, very long time and then you play one note. So how do you as a percussionist stay motivated when you are that person? You're the triangle player who comes up to play one note and you have to sit there the rest of the time. So how does that fulfill you as a musician, even though sometimes you just have to sit and wait for a long time to do one thing?
Yeah, I think usually in pieces where percussion is used in that way, where it's very sparse, that one note is supposed to be special. Otherwise, the composer just wouldn't include it. What's the point of it? So it's kind of fun to really think about what this sound needs to be, what it can add. And it can sometimes take quite a bit of focus to not daydream or, get lost. You don't want to stand up with your triangle and miss your note and have to just sit back down. That's a terrible feeling. So it's its own unique challenge, I think, to have to sit for long periods like that. Obviously, I think the most fun is when you're more active, but
yeah, for sure,
it is still rewarding to create the sounds that we make.
Yeah, I think it's I just was like, that was such a good metaphor for this year. It felt like of a percussion, having to sit in the back and wait for something to happen. You get to do one thing and then you have to wait again. But of course we like all that fun activity. Well, Alyson, thank you so much for being with us. I know there's a couple of you here. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording here, but if you guys want to stay on for a little bit, chat with each other, feel free. And Alyson, thank you so much for being here and for sharing the music with us. We really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in. I really appreciate it.